work and build our community that way. It's really important to kind of have that presence, and there's a few ways you can do that. And so, yeah, we've been growing this company for the past 3 years, and since the pandemic came, we've been fortunate enough to be one of those businesses that have sustained and grew during this past year. And we're so grateful for that because we know that so many people are, going through such hardship and just confusion. And for a lot of people, this is not their ideal situation. And we're obviously in an election year, which is crazy. So go register and vote. And yeah, it's been a crazy year. And I think that, we've been really lucky enough to be able to grow our talent base. And yeah, we learned a lot at our time at UNCG, and just like, I've also became an online student, so that obviously helped like my transition to working from home become a lot easier. And now that everyone's learning virtually from home for the most part, it's just been interesting to see kind of how everyone's adapted to it. Yeah. Yeah. So talking more a little bit about just sort of like entrepreneurship in general, I think that when we're talking about what it means to be like a successful entrepreneur, there's obviously a millions of definitions out there. So if you look at like a Forbes 30 under 30 list or something like that, like you look at all these people on the list and you're like, holy crap, how did they get there? And consistently across the board, there are three things that I think that make a successful entrepreneur. I think that it's passion, patience, and commitment. So the passion obviously comes for like the why that you're doing what you're doing, the intention behind it. You have to understand like what question or problem you really want to solve, and be really convicted in yourself to know that like you will solve this problem to whatever extent it is. And with that comes patience, because success doesn't happen overnight. There have been days where I've worked probably like 18 hours and I'm just like, how is this happening? Like, there's no way this is real life. Like, I can't believe like I want to get to this goal. Like, I want to get to a financial goal or a personal goal or a career goal. And why isn't this happening faster? Like millennials and Gen Z, we're very conditioned to like wanting things like instantly. Everything is this instant. I can Postmate something and it'll be here in like 5 minutes, or Amazon, right? Like, we're so used to this like instant gratification. And I feel like a lot of that is removed when you're an entrepreneur, because it's not easy. You don't do it because it's fun, right? You do it because it's impactful and you love it and you care about it. And so that requires like definitely a lot of patience. And that comes with that also the commitment. So kind of what I was talking about earlier, it's like not every path up to entrepreneurship looks the same. I, had a very unconventional past, I would say, education wise, even just in my learnings in general. And everyone has their own like ebbs and flows, right? With every great season, like there's always like a flow or an ebb that comes with that. And so you have to be committed and consistent throughout it. And I think a lot of that has to do with how you also take care of you, the entrepreneur. I'm really big on like this. I'm not an advocate for like a toxic work culture. I believe that, you can achieve balance in whatever different definition that is. But in order to truly be like successful, you have to feel good, and you have to really like not only like what you're doing, but also understand that it can be isolating at times when you're kind of just like doing this by yourself. If you have a small team, like Naomi and I are both full time, but we have a talent like contractors like globally. So it's really just us in Slack with our team, and you're alone for most of it, which can be a little intimidating. And I think right now with the pandemic, we're all experiencing like unprecedented isolation. So it's definitely really important to take care of yourself. And I think that's like what, helps make an entrepreneur. And, and just so that you can be a little bit more well-rounded. Jan, should I just keep going through questions?
Sure. If you want, I can ask you a couple to get you going again.
Yeah, sure.
I have a question too. I noticed you said conversational, so I hope you don't mind. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I apologize that I didn't do a little more research before joining this, but I did look at your website, and when I think about that patience and commitment aspect that you were talking about, I have some other friends that have been getting businesses off the ground, and especially in pandemic where it's hard to network, you mentioned. A couple questions I have is, one, I was curious how long ago you guys founded your company, and then too, when I think about kind of that patience, I see like your clients are featured and you have this really massive, well-known list of people. I guess I would love to hear more about that process on like, it's such a competitive space in social media. Like, how did you start to build that network, and how did you, um, what was your distinguishing factor that helped people attract you and like kind of build that momentum to be able to create this? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's such a good question. I love that question. So, I would say to answer your second question first, we've been really fortunate enough to get a lot of our clients from referrals. We've invested like virtually $0 in advertising and promoting and stuff, which is really, really awesome. And that's what we've noticed too, is like companies at scale, like these big advertising agencies have a few really, really big clients that help, supplement their entire company. And then initially when we first started off, which was we're on year 3 right now, so it's been 2 years. We met our first client and we were like, oh, like she was looking for like social media stuff, and Naomi and I were both kind of really active and just very curious about the space, because like to your point, it is very competitive, especially now. There's so many influencers, and there's literally during the pandemic 150,000 podcasts started, which is insane. And so there's definitely heavily saturated. And so for us, a distinguishing factor was a few things. Naomi and I really, and maybe a lot of other agencies say this, but like we put a lot of effort and emphasis on the client experience. Like we make sure end to end, like everything is really seamless and streamlined, and just really organized. Like we're really big on organizing, and both Naomi and I have technology backgrounds, so that was a really big part of it too. So leveraging social media data, and offering as much value for the price that we can. And we definitely started off small, like we had smaller contracts, and then we've definitely grown and proven our value over time. And so it does take time, and you kind of have to like fail a few times to really understand like what is working and what isn't. And then whatever isn't working, you hire for, so you contract out. And so we have a lot of opportunities in our talent base right now. So if you even fill out our Airtable, you can, apply to be an intern, because we never know. We want to always make sure that we have the right talent for our clients and our customers. So we are always growing our talent pool. It's kind of always open. And so we always hire for graphic designers, because for the first year or so, Naomi and I were doing it ourselves, like all of the graphic design, all the content design. And now we've been fortunate enough to kind of take a step back and approach it from more of a consultancy point of view. We are technically a startup as well. So because we're a small but like mighty team, we've had to kind of distribute our bandwidth more in order for us to focus on like those bigger clients and get that type of press coverage, or explore those opportunities. We can't be physically creating content, right? So we had to kind of take a step back as leadership and be like, hey, what do we want to do as leadership, and what can we hire for? And that has helped offset some of that, like, oh my gosh, like I have to time block like 6 hours to create content for a month or whatever it is. Versus now it's like, oh great, like I'm actually in a conversation with a client about, a prospective merger that they're doing, or brand partnership, and walking them through those types of things. And and it's been nice because we get to see kind of all ends of it. And so 3 years ago when Naomi first started this kind of business as a web design company, because she created websites in college or in high school. And then we were like, okay, like what else is digital? And then social media came about. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that was fabulous, and congratulations on your 3 years. It's really exciting. And you kind of actually, I'm sorry, I'm like deboing this a little bit, but
No, it's
you
fine.
you said a couple things that I think were really interesting to me too, about because I was going to ask, one of the distinguishing factors was your extra touch on kind of caring for those projects from beginning to end to really create that client experience. And I was going to ask, now that you're kind of expanding, how do you scale to keep that same distinguishing factor of that extra touch? And how do you kind of make sure that all of these new people, interns or contractors, are aligned to that mission of, like, I would love to hear more on, sorry,
Yeah.
you guys, I'd love to hear more on your like leadership on like, what are your elements of leadership that help keep that glue towards that
I
distinguishing
think
factor?
it helps to be at some level of a micromanager. I think not like entirely, but like, I mean, I think having like some level of like visibility is really, really important. Like because we've been growing our team gradually, we've been able to vet out everyone. We've been able to kind of just see like, kind of set those standards and set the bar high, because obviously no one is going to do what we can do individually. Like, no one does the work better than you can, right? That mentality. But also a lot of it is like trusting other people to do the right job and ask for guidance. And so we've had a couple of interns for the first time this year in our 3 years. And I'm really big on like weekly check-ins, like stand-ups with clients. Like on certain days, on Mondays and Wednesdays usually is when we have client stand-ups, and that's just what keeps us organized, so that we know like this is what we're talking, like we're talking to these clients on these days. Let's like make sure that the like create an agenda, create like any updates, like really spend that extra work and time, so that when we're communicating to them, they're not like, oh, why are we talking, right? So I think being intentional with sort of your approach, and I think having that visibility is really, really important. And just keeping things honest and transparent. Like we have really, like, I'm a very transparent person. Like if anyone really needs any sort of resource or help, like I'm usually that person to do it. And I think that like being clear with your expectations and communicating them first, of like, hey, this is what we're expecting, and providing feedback along the way. Like we're very active in Slack. Which is like IM messaging type of thing. We are constantly checking in with our clients. Like we're like, oh, like, and we it's more about work. It's more than work. It's like, hey, how was your like kid's birthday or something? Like, oh, or hey, like they'll ask me like, oh, hey, how's Denver? Like, what are you doing? Like that sort of thing. And it's more sort of that like family relationship that we've been building. And because they're referrals, a lot of our clients and even some of our talent, we kind of already know like the vibe and the energy. Like I'm a firm believer that good people also know good people. And so being able to kind of organize ourselves in such a way that like we can, have visibility without being so involved in it, because like we like to have a high level approach, and it takes some time to maybe like not like earn our trust, but for us to get to a place where we're like, okay, this can stand on its own. And we want like visibility in that there as well. And I think also too, just like realizing that people are going to make mistakes. Like that's okay. Like I make mistakes. I have my days where I'm just like, I'm not awake, I'm not alive, like, I'm just like dead to the world. And I get it. Like we're very understanding. Like as long as that communication and transparency is there from the beginning and that standard is set, we're willing to work with our contractors and our team as well. And we've actually recently hired like a leadership coach, because we've needed that additional support of how to scale appropriately, and which has helped us become better leaders. Because I think that like, I mean, I'm still in my like early 20s, so like I don't know anything about being a leader. Like it's really like I don't know. Like I like that's why the internet's free. Like it's great. So hiring other people and relying on our mentors and our like advisory board, which is kind of our like mentors and stuff, has really been really important. So like asking for help when we don't know, is really important, because like we don't know everything. Like sometimes I can be a bad leader, and that's okay. But it's just about holding each other accountable. Yeah. Any other questions from the crowd?
What are some mistakes you see businesses starting out doing, especially in the marketing, since that's more your expertise?
Not knowing what each platform is going to serve. Like if you don't know, like people, like you have to be really clear on what each channel and what channels you're going to be on and why. Like you have to understand like who your target audience is going to be on each platform. Like Instagram is going to look so different than LinkedIn. TikTok is going to look a little bit differently than Reels if you're dabbling into the Instagram world, and really understanding like who you're trying to communicating to and kind of meeting your audience where they are. So let's say you're a tech company and you are, I don't know, you're an engineering company, right? And you're looking to recruit young urban professionals, yuppies, or so to speak. And you want to use Instagram. So like you have to talk to them where they're at. So like engaging with some of their accounts, it's like using social media as a true social platform. I think that's another big mistake that companies make, is that they're not social on the social platform. Like it's not enough to just post. You need to talk to people. Like that's the point. And like that's literally a social network for a reason. And so I think if you don't identify the channels that you need to, and also just posting to post and you're not intentional about why you're doing it, then I think that's where companies fail. Anyone else?
Tarlon, could you talk a little bit about what kind of things you look for in interns and how you would determine how they would fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So big culture fit is important. I think that one of the things we look at interns, and we've hired for, like a few from UNCC and just like local as well, and they're all pretty much virtual. Right now, we are actively recruiting for sales associates as well as like standard digital marketing interns. We have an intern ending in the end of the semester. And so, we're always looking for that. Something that we're consistently looking for, just someone who's willing to like learn and problem solve. I think that people like are so quick to just like give up after they're like, oh, I don't know how to do this. It's like, well, okay, first ask. That's number one. Two, feel free to like obviously Google and just naturally problem solve and be really creative. Another thing we look for is someone who's like really like on the trends, on even like the quirkiness of Twitter or like Facebook or Instagram, things like that, where like they're on the pulse of the things happening in the digital space. They're like, oh, hey, this is a new platform. Maybe we should think about content for this. Or like, oh, this would be great for like so-and-so client. Like providing those, and it's hard to have that insight initially, and it kind of gets overwhelming. But we try to make sure that our team, our experience for our interns is very well-rounded. So like, especially if it's in a digital marketing role, it's like a lot of content creation for our personal social media profiles, but also like a lot of like client work. So if we're like, let's say we're overwhelmed with like a client tap project and stuff, we'll bring you guys on to the meetings and like get to see our process. And our process may not be the same as others, but like I would say it's pretty involved and like pretty thorough. But you get to see all like ends of it. So we're looking for someone who's just like, able to kind of, just jump in and be like ready and present and like ready to show up and just kind of step out of their comfort zone a little bit. Because we do like influencer marketing, we do paid social, we're getting into advertisements, things like that. So we're exploring new businesses for our agency as well, because that's not something we've traditionally done. And so we kind of want someone who's like, oh, like I'm really interested about this. I will research this and help build like the company standard. You really have a chance to make an impact at our company. Like we've had, interns make digital products that, we're revising and editing. We've had them create social strategies, sales strategies, things like that. And it helps set the foundation for the future of our company. And we'll take that and be like, review it and offer feedback. We're really big on feedback. And yeah, that way, like the intern can also grow. Any other questions as of right now?
With as fast as social media is changing, how do you stay on top of those trends? Like, how do you know which platform is like up and coming and which one's dying? Stuff like that.
I'm obsessed. I'm a junkie. I'm a social media junkie. No, I'm kidding. But no, I'm kind of not. But I'm obsessed with social media. I think it's such a really interesting platform. I look at all the good and the bad and the gray, like from the tech policies to social dilemma. If you've seen it on Netflix, I have a very interesting point of view on that. And from all ends of it, I think that I consume a lot of different types of content, like beyond social media. So podcasts, Medium, Reddit, sometimes and because of that, I think we have a lot of exposure. And just honestly research, like you just have to kind of have an eye for it. Once you're in the space long enough, you kind of look at social media differently. Like now when like Microsoft, for example, posts something on Instagram, I'm not like, oh, Microsoft, they didn't think about that they were going to post it. It's like, no, there's a strategy behind this. There was a discussion about what was going to be posted and when and at what time. And so I think like having an eye for that and understanding like why things work. Like before, like I was TikTok agnostic. I was like, nope, this is not going to be a thing. This is so stupid. Now I'm obsessed. Like now my view, like I don't even want to know my screen time on TikTok. It's embarrassing. But also it helps that we're younger. So like it's easier for us to adopt it. Like I feel like if my parents were on TikTok, they're like, what is this? Like a lot of our clients who are like parents are like, TikTok, I'm on it for my kids. And I'm like, cool. Your personal brand can thrive on it though. Like, and there's opportunities there. Like I always ask the question, like, what side of TikTok are you on? And I generally know what kind of person I'm dealing with. I'm kidding. But no, I think honestly just staying curious and staying really interested about it. Like I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't really love it. And so I think like, and it's hard. It's so much out there. Like I can't even keep in track of like not only like US social platforms, but also global ones as well, because we've also we're a global company. We've got like clients in London, couple in Jamaica as well. And we had relationships there. So we had to understand like their culture and their like social media platforms. Like what is the Facebook or Facebook adjacent of London, right? Like it's all pretty much the same, but then you kind of dabble into countries and their like policies and stuff like that. So you just kind of have to research and just be really interested in it. And what I mean by research, I mean just like consuming it and keeping it like an objective point of view, because I definitely think it can get toxic like at a certain point, like especially with all the news and like politics and stuff right now. Like we also serve political clients. We have 8 clients in the political space right now, which is insane because they're obviously we're in that season, but like I think the difference between this election and last election was social media wasn't as big, and so social media can be a lot of like really consuming. So you do have to take a step back, but I think the biggest thing is just stay like think about your like 12 or 11-year-old like youngest relative and see what they're using because that's essentially like the future of it. Because like I would say like baby boomers and like Gen Z or Gen X, millennials, that sort of thing, they're kind of using the same things, but also keeping in mind of like what channels are out there right now and how are people using it.
You mean old folks like me that don't know how to keep up with social media?
It's okay. I got you.
What do you think would be something that students would need to concentrate on to find a space in the future?
Honestly, and this is probably something you probably hear a lot, is just like digital. Everything is going online. Like maximize as much of the digital landscape as you can in the right way. And what I mean by that is like really work on your personal brands as young college students. Like, you know, take LinkedIn courses for free, like really like use this time and be intentional. Like I know we're in school, like I get it. Like you don't want to be taking another course, but taking it on something that you really are passionate about, getting a certification in Facebook, which is free. There's Udemy courses, Coursera, like there's so many Google ads, like just getting those certifications and that learning. Like you can even have it on the background of like while you're doing other things in place of a podcast or a book, to kind of keep your mind like stimulated and going. And yeah, working and leveraging your personal brand so that it can kind of stand out amongst all of this digital noise that's happening. I think it's just where our world is going. And it's, I think that a lot of people were intimidated at first because they didn't know what it meant. And because of the pandemic, we've kind of had to, but as things like sort of level out, I still think that the digital impact that millennials and professionals have is still really important. I think that you need to, not everyone, I think it's not in your personality, but I just think like having some sort of presence, like at least like bare minimum on LinkedIn, like make your LinkedIn look nice, like present yourself well, because it is kind of how it's the first barrier of entry, I think, when you first meet people. And I think a lot of students, like they're like, oh, I don't have that much experience, who cares what's on my LinkedIn? It's like, no, that's still valuable. Like your story, like your experience, still it matters. And you still need to like obviously highlight and captivate that. Any other questions? Let me ask. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask how you guys use social media. Like, where do you guys like? Are you guys on TikTok? Like Reels? Like, how do you feel about everything? Like, what part of the internet does everyone kind of live?
I'm older like Jan, but you're inspiring me to want to like go talk to my younger family members and figure it out. Like I'm in my late 30s, so I definitely just like use the same platforms that I always did. I've been avoiding Twitter and TikTok, even though like, friends will send me links to them and stuff, and I find value in them. I lived in New York for a while, and I had a younger friend in her early 20s that like whenever I get stuck on the New Jersey Transit, I'd be like, Twitter me, what's going on? Why are we stuck? So I think there's value in a lot of social media platforms beyond how I'm using it. And so listening to you is kind of inspiring me to want to explore more.
Yeah, there's so much out there. Just explore it. Like, and if you don't like it, that's okay. I mean, I think the algorithm always like thinks it always gives us what we think it thinks we want. And that's a whole other conversations with algorithms, how everything of that is set up. But yeah, there's so many resources. Like I get my news off of Twitter, you know, like and maybe like on newsletters or like things like that, and or a podcast. But there's other mediums beyond like social media. Like YouTube is a social media platform. It is, like, believe it or not. And so like however you consume it is like it's very personal too, because I know a lot of people like want to be like all like they were like, oh, I'm off the grid. I'm like, yeah, that's great, but like when you want to commute somewhere and navigate, like, are you gonna look at a map? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't. I would look at Google Maps. Google Maps over Apple Maps any day. That'd be a controversial take. There it is. Okay.
I agree with that one.
But yeah, how is everyone else using social media? Are you guys on TikTok? What do you guys consume? Who do you guys like? Who's like the influencer in your world? I'm so curious.
I watch a lot of YouTube for like classes partly, and then also I just learn a lot on YouTube. I have Facebook to stay in touch with like family mostly.
Awesome.
To this point, not a lot of friends are super active on Facebook. I do have an Instagram, but I don't ever use it. And
yeah, it's
TikTok
okay.
isn't something that I've really like gotten my hands into.
Yeah, no, like Facebook I don't really use as often, and just like once every like 6 months upload a bunch of photos so my family knows I'm alive. But again, like, it's one of those things, it's all personal. Like Instagram is it's not for everyone. It's a lot. It's definitely it's a lot out there. But that's really awesome. What about you, Luke? Saw you on mute.
Yeah, I would have to agree that I find the most value, like, you know, in my personal life from YouTube, just because, you know, like you said, you can go in there and find classes, or like if there's something you're interested in, you can go find it on YouTube, and you can learn something. Before I came back to school, I had a business, so I was actually a lot more active on social media as a business owner, trying to promote the business as I ever am, like, as a, you know, private individual. I don't really engage that much, but, you know, as a business owner, you kind of have to. So.
Yeah, and it forces all the like, because I'm a very extroverted person, so it's very easy for me to be like loud and obnoxious on social media, whatever. But I understand that people that aren't, and it's okay. It's okay. Like, again, there's Facebook, these social platforms are also designed for introverts as well. And so to your point, it's like as a business, you'll more likely engage. But as a person, it's a little harder. It's a little awkward, you know, to slide in someone's like LinkedIn DMs and be like, hi, like, I'm so-and-so, I want to connect. It's so awkward. It's like millennials, like we like in Gen Z, like we can barely call a doctor's appointment for ourselves. Like I'm so glad there's online scheduling, let alone sliding in someone's DMs to like say, hi, I want to connect with you professionally, whatever. And so no, I understand that. It can definitely be intimidating, and also just it's a lot of effort too.
That was the element I was going to say, is it's a lot of effort. Like I feel that pressure that, like, I have a LinkedIn profile. I very rarely use it. But I think it's because, like, I see so many people that are constantly posting educational articles or their opinions, and like, how do you keep that up?
Yeah, I think there's like there's two types of people in the internet, right? There's the consumers, and then there's like the users, right? The consumers, and like the people that put out content, and the influencers, let's call them that. And so I think like I consume a lot of TikTok content. I try to post a little bit just so I can understand the platform a little bit, but a lot of my personal usage is experimental. And because I'm in the space, I'm in the industry, but at the same time, like if I wasn't in social media, if I wasn't in marketing or like wasn't interested, I think I would consume majority of it. Because even now, like I think I consume probably a lot of content, but I still feel like I'm not catching up. And it's really overwhelming to the point where I'm just like, I am 5 days late on one podcast episode. I am 2 days late off of like some other newsletter. And I'm just like, this is too much. I needed to break. I need to put it all down and turn off my inbox for a little bit. there's balance. You have to figure out exactly how you want to use social media. But if it's for your personal brand and your business, you have to use it a little bit more proactively, or hire agencies like us where we can do it for you.
Can you speak a little bit more about using social media for your personal brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that this is kind of what has really started and ignited this whole social media wave when Naomi and I both realized there was this huge opportunity for businesses. And because we saw our personal brands, grow. The reason why social media is really effective is because it captures personal stories. Like before Instagram was, posted photos of your friends, Facebook was a dating app, right? Like it was, if you look back at the original idea and the original intention behind all these companies, it was not what it was today, and it grew really, really fast. And with that, created this massive window, this brand new industry or like brand new market of digital marketers, and that as well comes personal brands. Leveraging and creating your personal brand, I think you definitely should have a website, some sort of like thing that's not a social media platform, because these platforms are tools. They're literally tools, and tools break. So you can't always rely on them. And so you have to figure out other ways that your audience or your other people can find you on the internet. So if you're not on Instagram, if you're not on Twitter, that's fine, cool. At least have a website, have a pretty polished LinkedIn. That's really all you need for a young professional. And then using social media recreationally is what I like to call it, is on your own personal time. But there's also, depending on your goal, like if you want to just maintain, like if you want to work like a corporate 9-to-5 job, definitely like using LinkedIn to build those connections with people within your company, and also other young professionals within your like coworkers, colleagues, that sort of thing. Because we can't really you kind of have to manufacture that now, because we don't have access to our coworkers and our team members and people. And then you use it as a way to obviously like find jobs and opportunities. Like LinkedIn has done a really good job, and I credit this honestly to their integration with Microsoft, because like they did a really good job at building out their jobs and resource like functions on LinkedIn. I do consume a lot more LinkedIn than I have in the past, because they have LinkedIn Learning. You can even invest in a LinkedIn Premium if you're really trying to ball out, which honestly, I would recommend it personally, just because you get a lot of awesome features for young professionals. You can try it out for a month, see if you like it. If you don't, cancel it. But if you're actively seeking a job, I would go that path. And making sure that your resume is formatted in one of two ways. Either like it's really beautiful and like you make it on Canva, which is where predominantly I make most of my graphics for all content. I'm not too big on Photoshop, but for a simple design, Canva is chef kiss perfect. And so you can build your resume there, or the traditional like paper resume. What I found is when you apply for jobs, those pretty resumes don't really work, because the tool can't really scrape them. And so I would always have two, and then use like, if you know that this resume is about to go into a database and that this application is about to parse through it, my recommendation, and this is just from my experience, is make it as simple as make it look clean and simple, and then send the recruiter on LinkedIn your pretty resume and be like, hey, by the way, this is nice, and this is like, and follow up with them. And honestly, kind of like another thing, a part of it, and this kind of goes into the engagement piece of it, because like you can obviously having a clear headshot, and I know that UNCG's career services do a really good job at like really fine tuning your digital presence on LinkedIn. So definitely look at resources there. But in general, like you can reach out to recruiters from companies that you want to work with, like slide in their inboxes. They get it probably often, but if you make a strong introduction and like almost treat this as like a cover letter, short, sweet, to the point, like, hey, my name is so-and-so, I applied to this company, I applied to this role, things like that. Like you make a strong introduction. If it's a creative role, be really creative. If it's a little bit more buttoned up and professional, which is not my favorite, then like definitely reach for something a little bit more like speak to your audience, speak to the tone and who you're trying to deal with and work with. And obviously using LinkedIn or Instagram as well is to like another visual representation. If you want to be an educator or a thought leader, like depending on where your audience is, like Instagram is a great platform for that. TikTok is awesome because it's short videos and it's quick. You don't have to do the dances. You can just say like 3 tips for how to improve your LinkedIn presence, and then go like a sound or trendy sound with it. There's like formulas that you can follow that, are easy ways to build like a content strategy for yourself. of like, oh, I want to post a like blog post or like a thought piece on Medium and then share that to my LinkedIn. Great. And then by taking that Medium post and posting on LinkedIn, it improves the SEO, the search engine optimization of that, because you're resharing it on different platforms. That's why it's beneficial to also have different channels, because if you create any content, like original content, like blog posts from your personal blog or LinkedIn or Medium, whatever, you can improve the SEO by putting it in different places. Hopefully that answered the question. Yeah. You guys have any other questions? Anything social, digital, entrepreneurial?
I'm going to go back here for a second. And you said you were working with some political ads and different types of things. One of the things that I've noticed is Facebook and Twitter and their censorship. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that since Facebook and all these platforms learned from the last election, I would hope so. This is one of those things where I mentioned where like in 2016, it was my first time voting for an election. I never like was really, I was always involved in politics in some capacity, but definitely was very different on social media. And the biggest thing I would say is that I think they learned from just all the campaign controversy, and I won't dive too much into that, from the former election and from now, where they've really created like a resource center. Like I know Instagram has a resource center. Like it's very saturated with all this correct, like factually correct information. And I know that there's also a lot of bots and algorithms and people and companies that are literally hired to like scrape all of these platforms, all these accounts to make sure that there's right information. And I think that there's a really great podcast with Jack Dorsey, and I think he was on either Up Next or one of the NPR podcast episodes, and they talked extensively about like what Twitter was doing. And I think that what I've noticed, and when our campaign support that we've been doing for political organizations has been a lot for personal brands of like thought leaders and I would say officials, not like electoral officials in the political space, of like making sure that they look great on social, but also influencers. So in working with influencers and running influencer campaigns to encourage people to vote. You know, now you're seeing all these like merchandise that being created for voting, and these voting starter kits and things like that being sent to influencers, and they're posting about it. And that's more than it was 4 years ago, because now they're realizing, holy crap, influencers have a huge platform. They're speaking to 50,000, 100,000 people on a day-to-day basis. Let's capitalize on that. Now, I don't know what happens to the merchandise after the voting, the election, like all these vote stick, like t-shirts and stuff. Maybe we'll save it for next time. But I think that, and also too, and I did want to even address this too, is like some of that isn't always sustainable. Like I think that influencer marketing can also be very like not environmentally sustainable, because you're sending boxes and plastic and single-use stuff that people are not going to use. And I think that people don't really think about how much waste gets created, maybe not at scale, but like you're talking to at least 100,000 influencers, you're getting PR boxes sent out. It's not always like the most sustainable environmentally wise. But yeah, it's really interesting to see such a shift. And it's really cool to be old enough to experience that, like to be where we're at right now and to be aware and conscious of it. Because my little cousin or like younger family members are going to be like, yeah, pandemic, election. I'm like, no, like this is a big deal. Like this is huge. And like social media has definitely played a huge role in the political arena. And we've seen it. I mean, we've even seen the president using Twitter in such not the best way. And I think that these platforms have to get vigilant quickly, because it's not very regulated, and they've kind of had to learn as they go and be held accountable for some of their oversights, is what I will say.
I was going to ask about that. You had talked about having global relationships, researching policies, working with political, officials, thinking about that moral responsibility that you have. For your company, do you have legal and compliance kind of console or, consultants, or do you have an obligation towards certain like policies and privacy acts and things like that, or is some of that liability shifted onto the platforms or onto the companies? Just curious about that a little bit.
That's a great question. Yeah, so it's kind of shared. So we obviously have our legal counsel that we go to for contractual stuff and things like that. But when anything policy related, we use the discretion of the company that we're working with, or the agency or the organization that we're working with. So there's like different types of, like in the political space, there's like C3 and C4 organizations, things like that, where they have their parameters, and that team usually knows what they are. It's our job to make sure that we're in compliance with that, and we do our own research into that. But of course, we're not like we don't know how to read like a contract through and through. So like if there's any questions, we definitely send it to our company lawyer. But for the most part, like our teams have been really transparent with it. And we're just kind of we just keep an eye on what we can and can't do. The company will set the parameters, because at the end of the day, it's they're posting at that individual, so they care obviously a lot about it too, and they just kind of communicate those guidelines and parameters. But yeah, we do like to stay on the trend of it. Anything else?
Anybody else have any more questions? If not, then I just wanted to remind you that this was recorded. I did miss the first minute or two, but we'll put it up anyway. All of the sessions that we've had today will be linked on our website, and I will be sending out that link to everybody that registered, so you'll be able to go back and review any of the content. I wanted to thank Tarlon for her time. It's been very educational, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. If anybody wants to get a hold of her, I linked her website and her LinkedIn profile, and that way she can take any of the comments that you might want to provide and give her any feedback also. So
yeah,
thanks
please,
again.
you guys send me over feedback. You guys find me on all socials. I'm really excited to talk to you guys, and thank you so much for holding space for me to share my insights. And you guys asked some really great questions. I'm looking forward to any feedback that you guys have, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Super helpful. Really appreciate it. Love hearing your expertise and insights. Really thankful.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tarlon, thanks for your time.
All right, bye everyone. Right.
Bye.